I'm Dennis Anderson along with Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
There's a Minnesota-wide campaign to reduce traffic accidents, injuries, and fatalities. Tonight we'll learn more about the state's core traffic safety program called Toward Zero Deaths.
Also, the 7th annual Duluth Dylan Fest begins tomorrow, and we will talk with the event organizers about that celebration.
And we'll have the week's top business stories and dig into a news file story from 25 years ago.
So it's all coming up next on Almanac North. Hello once again and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday night. And Julie, we're only a week away now from a holiday weekend and a lot of people will be traveling.
Yeah, people already starting to move around now that the weather is getting nicer, people are getting out of school.
Yeah, they sure are. Road safety, of course, a very important topic, especially when we're heading into the summer months. And our first guest here to talk about that, Julie, so take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Denny. Since the 1990s, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety and Transportation have worked together to find better solutions to the problem of serious injuries and fatal crashes on Minnesota roadways. Minnesota Toward Zero Deaths is the state's cornerstone traffic safety program. And here to tell us more is Holly Kostrzewski, Northeast Minnesota Toward Zero Deaths Coordinator. Duane Hill, District 1 Engineer with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and Sergeant Ryan Morris with the Duluth Police Department. And thanks to all of you for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Holly, why don't you start with just kind of filling us in on what the concept is behind the Toward Zero Deaths campaign?
Sure. When we began, we had almost 700 fatalities on our roads, so we said, what are we going to do about this problem? So it's an interdisciplinary partnership between enforcement, engineering, EMS and trauma, and education to reduce deaths. And thus far, we've decreased our fatals by about 40%.
And how do those entities work together, those four E's?
Well, it's an interdisciplinary partnership, and Duane can speak on engineering and Ryan on the enforcement, but every crash that happens that's a serious injury or a fatal crash, we all look together at it with the four E's and see like what behavior caused it. Was it speed? Was it inattention? Were they wearing their seatbelt? Was there distraction involved? What behavior was associated with that? And then what solutions can we do to reduce that behavior?
Sergeant Morris, she just brought up a good point and mentioned the word distraction. When you put together a fatality, a fatal accident, and you start to investigate, is distraction one of the major causes?
Yeah, especially nowadays with technology, with cell phones, everybody having all of those things readily available to them, and even some of the technology in cars nowadays, we look to see what those causes are, what are those primary contributing factors to the crashes, but definitely that's one of the things we're going to look at.
Is there a certain age group who get distracted more than others?
I think Holly can maybe speak to statistics, but I know that we see it in all ages.
All ages.
I know when I've been out doing any enforcement, it doesn't seem to necessarily be just a younger generation thing. In fact, we see a lot of older generation. Sometimes it may be unfamiliarity with it, so they're a lot more distracted while they're driving. They're not as good at driving around and keeping their head up as some of the younger kids are. So,
Sergeant, what are the rules specifically in Minnesota related to cell phones and texting, and how do you enforce them when you're out in the field?
Well, cell phone usage, if you're making phone calls, is still legal in Minnesota. As far as any of the other electronic use, texting, whether it's surfing the web, whether it's getting onto a Snapchat app, even some of these maps, if they're not a hands-free entity, if you're accessing apps, any of that stuff is illegal while you're in any part of traffic. So that also includes when you're sitting at a red light. If you're sitting at a red light and you're texting on your phone, technically by statute, that's illegal.
Yeah.
So we want everybody's full attention when they're driving, even when they're not necessarily moving. So
Duane, a two-part question. Can you address for the public how highways have changed over the last 40, 50 years, and how automobiles have changed?
Well, highways have changed because we have worked hard as we reconstruct roadways to make sure that we have a safe place to run off the road if you run off the road. And in the rural part of the state, half the crashes that occur are run off the road crashes. Many of them are single vehicle crashes that cause these serious injuries and fatalities. So we try to, when we do reconstruct the roadways, we try to make it so it's a traversable slope, so if you do run off, you can recover without rolling over and at least come to a stop, or possibly even be able to get back onto the roadway.
So highways and automobiles are safer these days?
So definitely safer, and automobiles definitely, as over time they've improved with features like seat belts and airbags, and all of those features help make sure the occupants survive a crash if they do get in one.
Mm-hmm. Holly, as we mentioned in the open, this is a busy time of year for people to travel. There are holidays coming up. People are vacationing. People are celebrating the end of the school year, things like that. How do you get the message out? What are some of the educational components to really teach people how they can actively be safer drivers out on the road?
Well, our national Click It or Ticket campaign starts on Monday, so it's May 22nd through June 4th. So nationwide, there's extra law enforcement on the roads just looking for seatbelts. And so we have to remind ourselves that we're protecting each other on the road. We're all sharing the road together. So if people want to just grab that one text, I'm just going to look at my phone once, or I'm going to try to get there 5 minutes quicker. You're sharing the road with somebody else's mom or dad or child, and we all want to get there safely. And so we're just reminding people that the best defense in a crash is the seatbelt. So put your seatbelt on first, and then put your phones down and away, and keep the speed low. Find a sober ride home.
And we often think about texting with young people, but parents need to be modeling some good behavior too, I imagine.
Several times when the officers actually stop someone for texting, they take a picture of it for court. And we've seen several of these, and there's never been an emergency on any of these texts that have gone through that the officers have stopped people for. And we've seen many from parents texting their kids. So just as a reminder, if you know your loved one is traveling, just don't bother them, because we have this ability in our brain that we think we have to get back to them right away, and we don't have to while we're driving. That's our complete focus, should be just the drive.
Sergeant, a two-part question for you. Does Click It or Ticket work, and what kind of fines? Can you address that? What kind of fines do we face?
Yeah, I think we see it working. In Minnesota right now, we're at, when they do the observational studies, we're at 93%.
Really?
We're above nationwide averages, and I think it does work. There's still a lot of room to, we have 7%. We want to get to 100%. So there is room to grow on that, but the fines end up being over $100 when you end up paying the final fine on it. So it's not an insignificant ticket, but it's I think we're making some changes in a lot of the different ways of our enforcement, whether it's DWI, speed, seatbelts. I think people are kind of heeding the warnings a little bit more.
The Duluth Police Department takes part in that as well as State Patrol, all police officers?
Yeah, so when we do our TZD campaigns, our Towards Zero Death campaigns, we actually have 6 agencies besides State Patrol. So it would be Duluth Police Department, Floodwood Police Department, Proctor, Hermantown, University of Minnesota, Duluth Police Department, and the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office. So in our southern St. Louis County area, we all partner up and do these campaigns together.
Duane, we had you on the show just a couple of weeks ago talking about the road construction season getting underway. Those are always zones where people have to be particularly careful. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, so in those zones, one of our slogans is orange cones, no phones. So, you need to have your complete attention on what's happening when you drive through those work zones, and you need to drive the speed limit, because things that you don't expect are going to happen. With the other traffic traveling through, gawking at what's going on with the construction activity, vehicles moving in and out of the work zone. And so it's really critical people pay attention, make sure they're not distracted as they're driving through those areas.
And what about the highway signs that you sometimes post, road conditions, things like that? Have those proved to be pretty effective at helping warn people of what's ahead and bring down some of the crashes?
I think they're more intended to make sure that the public knows what's ahead, and especially during the construction season, we're trying to alert people to congestion ahead. So you see the signing on the I-35 corridor well in advance of our work zones telling people, hey, there's congestion at this time and we have sensors out there to identify it, and it gives people an opportunity to take an alternate route and avoid that if they choose.
Holly, there's a workshop, I believe, coming up on May 31st. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So it's our regional workshop. So the 8 counties in northeastern Minnesota will look at crash data. We'll have a personal impact speaker. We'll look at the data from 2016. It's all the E's get together in our 8-county region. You're welcome to join us.
Are you finding we're doing better year by year?
We are, yeah. Last year, 392 people died, so a 40% decrease from when we started, but that's still 392 lives that we lost on Minnesota roads.
Yeah.
So 392 too many.
Is zero death, is that something that is reasonable to expect?
We're asked that all the time. And then the question always is, what is acceptable? Because I don't want it to be my 2 people or my 4 people. You know, if we do towards 0.4 or something, I don't want it to be my people, and you don't want it to be your people. So 0 is the only acceptable.
Yeah.
Is there a place that people can go if they want to find out more information?
Sure,
about
MinnesotaTZD.org.
And so the campaign will be going through the construction and summer transportation season, or?
Our campaign's year-long, all year long. So.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming in and sharing some information about it, and we hope that you move closer to that goal.
Thank you.
That we all
Thank you.
move closer
Yeah.
to that goal.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
What happened in South Central Los Angeles? Okay, rioting broke out. As of this morning, 21 people were reported dead, 200 plus were wounded, property damage in the hundreds of millions.
American history teacher Jim Fischetti is trying to bring the tragedy and violence of what is happening in Los Angeles to his Duluth classroom. It might be hard to believe teens so far removed would know or care much about the situation, but they do.
I was outraged. I mean, I'm a white, middle-class student with, good background, and I've learned that not to be prejudiced, and to hear an all-white jury say that their police officers are not guilty, and look what they've done to a culture and to a race.
I think it's a disgrace to their own culture. I mean, they're condoning the activities that they shouldn't. I don't think it's a way to solve the problem, and they're only hurting themselves.
And although there hasn't been any riots in our relatively violent-free nook of the country, just like the young people in Watts, many teens here are angry, concerned, and looking for answers.
I hope before I die, I honestly hope there will be one black president, because then it may show the white people what they've done to their nation and show black people what they can do.
There's some discrimination. There's a lot
Kathy
of it still
Evangelista,
around.
KDLH
If you
News.
look at- there's a-
Well, Duluth, of course, is the birthplace of Bob Dylan. And to celebrate his 76th birthday and his awarding of the Nobel Prize in Literature, the 7th annual Bob Dylan Fest will hold events throughout the city beginning tomorrow with a benefit concert by Robbie V. at the Carpel's Manuscript Museum here in Duluth. And here to tell us more about this fest are Duluth Dylan Fest committee members, Brad Nelson.
Hi.
We've also got with us tonight John Bushey. John's been with us before, and Nelson French. We appreciate all of you being here tonight. And maybe we can lead off with you, Brad. Tell us what's planned now for this week. This is going to be a big week in Duluth.
It is going to be a big week. Yeah, we have a museum opening up for the event. A lot of John's artifacts as well as Bill Peggle's artifacts, and some others will be there. We have the Armory concert, of course, with Robbie V, and we have the Basement Tapes Band, kind of a local super group forming to do covers of Bob Dylan's Basement Tapes, and the Blood on the Tracks Express on Thursday night, We have a poet event, poetry event with poet laureates from the Northland, as well as a host of other events that people can find online at bobdylanway.com.
Full schedule.
Yeah.
John, talk about some of the artifacts that people can find.
Well, thanks to William Peggle Archives, Bill Peggle, who owns the house in Duluth that Bob Dylan was born in. It was unbelievably successful last year and just drew in a host of people. We had people that were connected to Bob come in and see, and we have many original, handwritten early lyrics of Bob Dylan, letters handwritten of Dylan. You know, from his religious period, but, you know, back to the early songs, typed manuscripts of some of the items. I know he threw in a special case for the Nobel Prize, you know, having a mock-up of the actual medal and what you would actually receive in a real program to the event. We've just got a whole case on the Rolling Thunder Review, the famous tour that many times have been here, Scarlett Rivera. And we've just got all kinds of unusual, rare memorabilia from the Bill Peggle Archives.
Yeah. Nelson, talk to us a little bit about Dylan's start, his birth, of course, here in Duluth, but it went much farther than that. Talk to us a little bit about his start here and the road that led to stardom.
Well, it's really interesting because he, as we all know, he moved to Hibbing at age 6 or so, and went through school in Hibbing, and then you know, one of the things he did at age 17, I think he was a senior in high school in 1959, he came down here to Duluth, joined up with his buddy Louis Kemp and a few others, and went to the Buddy Holly show at the Winter Dance Party at the Armory. And that was a wonderful event. Only 3 days later, Buddy Holly was no longer with us. And you know, one of the exciting things we have going on this year is the opening concert for this event includes Robbie V. Now, the story behind the scenes here is that Robbie V is the artist at age 15 who filled in for Buddy Holly for the Moorhead show, which was the show after the Clear Lake, Iowa show. So Bob and Bobby connected later that year, and actually Bobby V hired Bob for about 3 or 4 shows to play the piano, and then they quickly disposed of Bob, or Bob moved on his way.
Right.
So there are some interesting linkages here about the pathway to stardom. So both Bobby V and Bobby Zimmerman and Bob Dylan kind of grew up at the same time, became stars in their own right in different venues, and they had a friendship over the years.
The birth of 2 superstars.
Oh, birth of 2 superstars, all Minnesota stuff, good Minnesota stuff.
And the concert is going to be Robbie V, Bobby's son.
The concert is Robbie V and his Rock and Roll Caravan, which is Bobby's son, and Robbie will be doing a portion of the program as V Does V. So they're going to do a lot of Bobby's old songs, and it's going to be a wonderful event. And this is the 6th year that we've now had a concert in association with the Duluth Dylan Fest, and we hope that it raises awareness about the breadth of Bob's exposure in this community and the rich history that the Armory represents in rock and roll history.
And we should mention that Robbie V is here tonight in studio. We'll close the program with him.
That's going to be a good way to end the program and a good way to launch your festival. Brad, how did growing up in northern Minnesota influence Bob Dylan?
Well, that's a question. Of course, I don't have the ultimate answer to, but I think.
Or his music.
Well, right. But I do think that place affects everyone, and no matter what we do, and especially artists who are. The role of an artist is to kind of reflect and channel, I guess, whatever is around them, and I think that. With any artist, whether it's Bob Marley or the Beatles or Elvis, it's always interesting to see what were the inputs that made that artist. Whatever went in came out as their art form, and there's always a moment in time and a sense of place, and whatever's happening around them, whether it be a war event or whatever, the Vietnam era and things like that helped shape a lot of different artists. But so I think it's without question that this place and this region, the iron mining and the different cultures that were alive and well and at the time helped influence Bob Dylan's, the making of him, especially looking at how young he was when he started writing some of the substantial songs that he did. So history has a long tail, and I think culture does too. And I think that one of the really interesting things that has evolved out of the festival itself that I didn't see, at least going into it, is just what are the remnants of culture that are still here, that are still coming through, the artists that that are still working in the Northland.
John, what makes Bob Dylan's music so timeless?
Oh, that's another great question. I think.
Who's he speaking to?
Well, that's just it. Everybody thinks that he's speaking to them.
As individuals.
I don't think Bob believes that. But like he said, back in 1967 in Socrates, New York, people would just show up wanting to talk about organic farming. And as Ed Bradley once asked him, well, Bob, what do you know about organic farming? Nothing.
It was a different era.
I think it's a combination of his wonderful word, which ties into his winning of the Nobel.
Yes.
His use of language is just amazing. His choice of words, and his songs seem to have multiple meanings. They seem to have more than one meaning. You can take, I think it's about this. I think it's about this. And I think that's part of what is so timeless about Bob Dylan, and always will be.
Mm-hmm. Now, do fans come from around the country or around the world for this festival, or is this something that just local people kind of embrace?
Well, I can say that I'm tracking the ticket sales for our event, and we had a ticket purchase from Australia, of all places.
Yeah.
So people are coming from around. Maybe not the numbers that we would like, but I think that's going to happen over time. I think the legacy that Bob is leaving and the work that this group is reflecting is going to grow into the future, and it will fill in a very important part of Duluth's and the North Country's social and artistic history over the next 100 years.
We just had a journal, actually the publisher of Rolling Stone in France was just recently here in Duluth to interview people and just explore exactly what we're talking about. Where did Bob Dylan come from? What helped shape Bob Dylan? So his article isn't out yet, but we're starting to see more of that too, just international interest in Duluth and in the event itself.
Now, periodically there are Bob Dylan sightings up in our area. Any expectations that he could be lurking in the sidelines at the festival? Does he know about it?
Well, I'm here to say that if you show up at Bob's house, Boyhood House, this Wednesday, between 3 and 4 o'clock, there's going to be a house party. And if he comes, that would be the place.
Yeah.
No, he's never showed up, but we are going to have a little house party for him. And he's always here in spirit. Sure. We don't throw this festival expecting Bob Dylan to come or to be here. Yeah. We like to celebrate the local musicians and culture.
And with that, we have to end it. We really thank you very much for being here tonight and telling the story.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
It's time for the week's business news from the folks at Business North. The Northland's first indoor gun shooting range is being built in Cloquet at a cost of $1.9 million. Chad and Laura Walsh are developing Dead On Shooting, which will open this fall. It will offer 10 lanes for shooting practice, but also allow customers to try out different gun models, sell guns and ammunition, and offer training related to gun safety and concealed carry permits. In addition to the general public, the range will be available to law enforcement agencies and the military. Owners intend to eventually employ 10 people.
Dave Hernesman, the owner of Ray's Sport and Marine in Grand Rapids, is constructing a new 15,000 square foot showroom. offices, and a 4,500 square foot service shop. It's going to replace an existing facility that the company has outgrown. The $2 million new store will provide more room for detailing, winterization, indoor storage, and shrink wrapping. Ray sells about 300 boats per year, and he services twice that number. Hernessman owns 5 partner stores in Minnesota, employing 75 people.
Marshfield Clinic Health System and Security Health Plan, which both operate in northern Wisconsin, are making it easier for patients and residents to safely dispose of their medications. They are adding collection kiosks at 14 locations to help curb prescription drug abuse. The kiosks also will help prevent inappropriate disposal, such as flushing medications down the toilet where they can pollute drinking water, or throwing them in the trash where they can be found and abused. When the kiosk is filled, authorized persons will safely remove the contents for proper disposal. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
So if you have a comment about our show, call now, dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send us an email to almanacnorth@wdsc.org. And you can check the WDSC website when you're looking for program information, updates on station events, and other news here at your public TV station. We would also like to take this moment to mention the passing of television and radio personality Pat Cadigan of Duluth, who died this past Monday morning at the age of 81. Of course, Pat will be fondly remembered as the voice of KDAL radio. He also was on the radio many times during huge storms that struck this area and major events, and of course for his love of polka music. And speaking of music, we have Robbie V in the studio right now. He's going to kick off Dylan Fest with a benefit concert tomorrow night at Carpella Museum. And right this moment will give us a taste of what concert goers may expect. So for Julie and the crew at Almanac North, I'm Dennis Anderson. Good night, everybody, and be kind.
Susie, baby, where are you? Have you left me for some other new? Is your love light shine bright? Say you love me, never on me wrong. I hear so. Come back, baby. I come back home. Say you love me, never. I